So, Brian, if I understand this correctly, standard solar panels when they're tied into, the power grid, which is how you normally do it, unless you're, you have solar panels and you're trying to live completely off the grid and some remote area or something like that, you're not able to provide power to your house during a blackout, even if it was during the day. So, can you explain that and how adding a solar battery to my system would allow me to use solar energy as a backup power source during an outage?
Sure, that is a common misconception, right? That I got solar. Why can't I have it all the time? Why does it go
Isn't that going
down?
to power my refrigerator when I have a power outage during the day or
Right.
something like that? Yeah.
So just due to safety and code compliance, basically the inverter, which is what takes the solar panel electricity and make it so our homes can use it, that inverter needs to see a signal from the grid. So being a grid tied system, it sees a wave signal from the utility that the grid is up, and that tells it it's okay to continue operating. When that signal goes down because there's a power outage and the grid is down, for safety's sake, it tells the inverter to shut off, and it does so instantly. And therefore, you're not pushing power onto the grid and potentially hurting or killing the people that are trying to get the grid back up and running. Because the flow of electricity, if we think of it like water, right, it doesn't discriminate. It goes to the path of least resistance. And if the grid is down, the wire is still connected to your home, and if you're pushing power onto the street, so to speak, or onto the utility lines, there might be someone right in your street that's working on the grid, and they're going to get hit by that electricity. So they've already shut off what they need to shut off to make sure that there's no feed coming to that area as they're trying to work on the grid. And all of a sudden there's a solar, right? If this were allowed, right, there's a stream of electricity that's coming on locally that would injure them. So
Right.
for
They don't have
safety,
any way at their power company to go, oh, that your house on that street over there. I'm going to shut off your power while we're working on the lines outside your house. They don't have any way to do that if you have. Well, the way to do that, I mean, they can do that. They shut off the power when they're working on the lines, but then if your solar panels were pumping electricity into the system as well, they wouldn't have any control over that. But you're saying that the system is designed such that it shuts off that power to make sure that those
it
people
shuts
are
off
safe.
when the grid goes down, the inverters go down.
Okay.
But to your point, there is an additional layer that the utility and fire departments and local town officials know exactly the setup, because we have to apply for permits with a design and detailed one line diagram with all the electricity diagram. And there's what's called a rapid shutdown, which is a safety compliance that started in 2015. And what that is there's a disconnect on the outside of every house that has solar so that the utility can shut it off. But in an event of an emergency, their focus is getting the grid up and running, not running around shutting all the individual solar systems off. So if they were, when the grid is up and they needed to work on your section of the grid, they will come and shut your solar system off and then turn it back on when they're done. But in the event of an outage, due to the emergency, piece of that, they're gonna the inverters and the electronics of every solar system needs to shut off automatically when it doesn't see that grid signal. Um, so that absolutely that does happen where you lose your solar, so to speak. But if you add a battery system to it, there's another mechanism, right? Part of that system um, is to cut you off from the grid. The battery then provides that signal to the inverter, which is how your inverter is able to now stay up and operating. So typically speaking, it's an automatic transfer switch and other controls that are set up to interact with your panel and the grid. And when the grid goes down, your automatic transfer switch from your battery system is engaged instantly. It's usually within milliseconds. So you generally don't even see a flicker of light or anything disrupted in your home. You just know because the app tells you you're on, your grid's down and you're on battery backup now. And now your battery is providing power to your home as signal to the inverter to keep the solar system up and running. and now your solar system and battery together are in conjunction are operating to power your home.
And if it's during the day, then you're charging that battery, and if it's at night, then whatever charge that the battery has, you're going to use that to power your home.
In theory, right? In theory, provided there's sunlight, you can be a perpetually operating home off of the grid. So you could, as long as there's sunlight and you have battery capacity because your solar is either powering your house and trickle charging or charging the battery, you're able to stay operating in full. And we'll say infinitely, but there are other weather criteria and things like that disrupt you being an essentially perpetually operating home.
I mean, what is the typical capacity of a solar battery? How long can I expect to run off of my battery system in my home after if I do lose power?
So it really depends on the battery system that you choose or that the installer offers, right? That you're working with. But I'd say typically speaking, it's around 10 kilowatt hours, and that's for a smaller one. But then you can add capacity, so it really depends on the platform. For us, we offer a couple different options, and it's between each battery offers between 10 and 13.5 kilowatt hours of power, and you can do multiples of those batteries. So it kind of depends on what your need is, and what the loads are in your home and things like that. So there's different, like a generator. There's the kind of portable generators, whole home generators, and there's kind of like, okay, you get an essential load, so let's keep the Wi-Fi and the fridge operating, right, and maybe some lights for if you had a portable generator, or it's a whole home and it can power everything. So the batteries are more comparable to a generator in that respect. Is a smaller battery system for maybe we're just targeting lesser loads. It kind of depends on the home and the lifestyle. Or another home might want everything backed up and have a larger capacity there.